Oh, my beautiful baby. He was such a beautiful baby with his curly browns and big brown eyes. And it came on the radio today, that song, Brown Eyed Girl. I used to sing that to him, but say Brown Eyed Boy.
We did a lot of activities with each other. We would always like to play baseball. And we had this, Guitar Hero game where you play guitars, right?
We took a trip to Spain, to Malaga, and he was a great consumer of everything that was there. He took in it all. And I think that was one of the qualities about him that was really special, was he was pretty much fully engaged in anything from the time he was a young child.
Every time I was in a pickle, he would always have advice for me and how to fix it. And he would always put his family and his friends first. He'd be very understanding. He would know if I had the tone in my voice like I do now. He would know that I was in trouble or I had a really bad day. And then I needed him.
Even as a 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old, kindness was just part of who he was. And he also had a very good sense of humor. He liked to play, but he also was a hard worker.
He's just a good little guy. Mm-hmm. But when he first got diagnosed, he went from a kid who really loved school to hating school, and I didn't know what was going on.
There were times where we'd be playing in the backyard, and out of nowhere, we would just assume Jared went off into thought for a minute.
We realized later that what was happening is he was having absence seizures, and he was getting into trouble because he was having a seizure, and then he'd ask what I miss, or he'd ask his buddies. And, so this was a teacher who would say things like, we were having trouble paying attention, and we were having trouble listening.
If we were playing cards, I'd take my turn and look at Jared, and he'd just kind of blank face for a minute. It just, to us, he looked like he's thinking about it. And then he'd snap out of it as though it's like, oh, I just finished, so he's going to go.
Well, it was assumed that it was that he was misbehaving, not that he was actually missing instructions. So he would come home and not want to go to school, and he'd be crying, Mommy, I'm always in trouble there, and I don't like the teacher. And I can tell you, I didn't really like the teacher either at the end of that year. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I got to talk to her and explain to her what was going on, and I think I made a bit of a difference at the end. He'd do sleepwalking in the night and horrible sort of night terrors, which we realized were a type of seizure. Now I know that. I didn't know that then. He was walking on the beach one day and he had a seizure, and it was a partial complex seizure where his head would go and his arms, and he'd have fear face. And my dad said to me, that was a seizure. And I said, oh my God, I know. I hadn't seen them that way. So they were getting worse. They were progressing. Got him on the wait lists for everything and went to our doctor. Meanwhile, there was no action happening. Nobody had put him on a machine or seen or anything. And the seizures were getting worse and longer. And he fell off my parents' boat in the middle of a seizure and almost drowned. And my brother dove in and saved him. It was very dramatic. So after that, we said, that's it. And we took him to emergency and we camped out and we wouldn't leave until Jared had a seizure. And the doctors, who were pretty annoyed at us at that time, basically, he had a big seizure in the emergency. We'd been playing cards for 5 hours waiting for him to have a seizure. He had one, and the doctor turns to me and says, that was a seizure. And I said, I know, that's why we're here. And that's when they hooked him up and said, oh yeah, he has a seizure disorder, and put him on medication. And we had to spend the night in the hospital. We had to wait after that emergency room visit for at least 3 more months before we got in to see a child neurologist. I did everything I could to learn more about how to have Jared be seizure-free. We took all the courses. We joined the Epilepsy Foundation here, the Headways. We would go and research and figure out different things, and we would connect online with people who also had people in their lives with seizure disorders. I volunteered if I wasn't the kind of person that I was, I probably wouldn't have had him seizure free by the time he was 12. And it showed. He was really doing great. He was controlled. And then he had a growth spurt. And once he had the growth spurt, we needed more attention because the seizures came back. And they never left after that. I remember the first Christmas that we had together. We brought our kids together for the first time, and both Ash and I were so nervous because we were afraid that it wouldn't go well. And like we kept saying, oh my God, it's going well, right? It's going well. Don't you think it's going well? And we were afraid at any moment that it would all blow apart. And it never did. And they just all got along so well. And Jared was a big part of that. He was a big part of our family. He gave me away at the wedding with his sister, and Ash's kids gave him away. And both of the elder children, Jared and Hannah, signed our wedding agreement. And it was a beautiful day.
At my mom's wedding, well, I performed many songs, but the one that was with Jared was Over the Rainbow, because we'd always sing that with my mom every time something like was either happy or sad.
I did really love when he played in my dad and Amanda's wedding. It was really nice.
Yeah. Everyone was crying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Jared did create and wrote and put out an album with 5 songs.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have it in the car. And on a few times I would give him a ride, and it was just him and I. And I would say, hey, why don't we put on some other music other than the radio? And I would play his album. And I would look over, and when that first song started, he instantly would light up, and he would have a huge smile. And then he would just ease back in the seat.
Mm-hmm.
And we played it loud, the way it was meant to be.
He really, at that point had started to accept Ash into the family, and was calling Hannah and Zach his brother and sister.
He's really good at getting gifts.
Yeah, he's really good at getting gifts.
I'm just like, that's such a good quality for someone to have. And they were always like so specific and thoughtful, and they always had some sort of like reason or story behind it.
He's like, yeah, are you going to buy anything? I'm like, no, I don't really have the money, it's kind of expensive. And then he went and bought a CD, and he's like, oh, well, you should listen to this. I'm like, oh, okay. And he's like, yeah, like I bought it for you. Like this is yours, dude. I'm like, oh, sweet. Like, it was just so nice.
He really enjoyed a gathering, and he loved coming to family dinners. He really liked that, and birthdays are really important to us. And so he never wanted anyone to ever feel upset or alone. And at parties, he often would approach the one that looked like they weren't having a good time.
He was one of those people that made a huge impact on anybody he interacted with for like 10 minutes. Yeah, that was actually one of the reasons why I fell in love with him in the first place. I saw him on stage, talked to him afterwards, and he made that impression.
But I had a little like a memory jar that I wrote things down and put them in there. I would like take them out at the end of the year, and I found it. And when I did at the end of the year, I took a picture of it and I sent it to him. And I'm like, oh yeah, like I wrote down the time I met you guys, and how awesome it was. And it was funny because he sent a picture back to me in his journal, wrote down the same thing. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
It was pretty scary at first when I first moved in.
He'd jam in the...
He would practice in the house, and there'd be the band would come over and they would be hauling in equipment. And every piece of equipment, I get a little more nervous. A little more nervous. I'm like, didn't know quite what to expect. Surprised the house is still standing. It's a lot of vibrations.
A lot of vibration.
A lot of sound.
I think in music, he was at his best and the healthiest.
He was super passionate about the music that he did and all the people around him. So I think they definitely fed into each other.
He loved being on stage and being able to put on that performance, and because that's really what he saw it as. It wasn't just going out and playing music, it was performing. It was going out and making sure that they got a show, and everybody did. Like, he was fantastic at that.
A lot of how we spent time together was working on his band. It started off where he talked me into coming into this rehearsal, and I was immediately impressed with their playing, his natural sense of rhythm, his creativity, and most importantly, his energy. There was so much passion and electricity in his playing and his singing and the way he wrote.
He was a beast on stage. It was pretty amazing. He really wanted to teach me how to play, but when he would, he'd go off and like this really cool riff, and I'd look at him and be like, yeah, you're gonna have to go way slower than that.
He like played circles around us.
Yeah. Some of them mentioned practice was hard with Jared because they had to keep up.
Yeah.
And it made them a better musician.
Better musician.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he inspired a lot of them
Mm-hmm.
to be even more creative with the music.
In a minute, he'd just be talking to somebody if the family was out. Like if we were at like a restaurant where there would be music playing, he would always, like, after he'd go up to them and say, oh, you did amazing, man. You were good. Was that your first gig? And they'd always be like, yeah, that was my first ever gig. And then he'd like help them out and give them pointers. He was just that type of person.
My band played our very first show, like my first time playing in front of anyone live. We did it with his band.
It was challenging music, both technically, artistically, creatively. It wasn't easy to play. So I was excited that I was going to have to push myself to play it, and he was excited to work with me to teach me the songs and to have me contribute to them.
Yeah, he was inspiring to many in the metal community.
Yeah. He would say, you know, Mom, I have a concert coming up. I guess you can come. But stand in the back and don't embarrass me.
I would stand in the back and I'd be nervous, and I would try to wear all black and I would try to fit in.
Yeah.
And I realized I wasn't going to fit in.
No.
Because sometimes grandma and
grandpa would come
as well.
Oh yeah. My mom never missed a show if she got invited.
Show up in a pink fuzzy shirt, and I would naturally end up standing beside her, really not fitting in, but enjoying myself, and then not caring, and then realizing the metal family is very welcoming,
mm-hmm.
and we would always have a fabulous time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Remember the earplugs. And we did.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was trying to do so much. Like, he was trying to, continue with his band as much as he could, form other bands. He just joined a cover band, like a 90s cover band that he was super excited about. So he just wanted to keep busy and do all these things.
He said to me at one point, because I asked him, do you hear music all the time? He said, oh yeah, all day long he hears music. And then bang, he has a seizure. And the music stops.
It happened quite a lot when we hung out. It'd be about 4 or 5 times a day. There were some times when we'd hang out later at night and you just see like this huge, it almost looked like a twitch, like a whole arm or a whole leg just kind of kick out for no reason. And half the time he didn't even know he did it.
And then other times he would be really mad, just 0 to 60. He would just be super mad and there'd be a roar and he'd stomp around or he'd throw something, and then he might go into then almost a partial complex fear face, drawn back head. And then other times it would be a full out in his sleep thrashing, couldn't breathe kind of seizure. So he'd really run the gamut. And then other times he was just Jared.
It's a difficult game to play in a life, especially in a young life, where there are times when you're fine and there are times when you're not. And you never know which is going to be when. There was also a sense, I think, of an increased feeling of vulnerability as a result of that.
He was really scared. He knew something was, he'd been dealing with it his whole life. But I think he was trying to tell me, he was like straight up telling me like, yeah, it's getting worse.
I mean, you wouldn't know sometimes when he'd send pictures of, himself in that whole headpiece with all the wires attached to it with a weird face on, trying to power through it, but you could tell he's absolutely just terrified of it.
I tried to get him to talk to his doctors about it more. He expressed a lot of resistance regarding that just because of past experiences that he'd had with doctors and them not believing him, them completely doubting and questioning him in regards to the severity of his epilepsy.
And it wasn't until we hit Dr. Moyen who really made Jared feel as if he was being heard and believed.
There was one time, I guess, he had an appointment, and he told me that they showed up and everything, and they had made a mistake, and they booked him as well as somebody else. So the other person got in, and he got rescheduled. And there were a couple of times when he called, he's like, "I feel like because I missed this, I'm screwed."
Jared would have a hard time focusing. Mm-hmm. So for him to have a full-time job, mm-hmm. to work an 8-hour day, he would be too tired.
He didn't really sleep that much because of all the seizures. And he would always sleep in the day because I don't know why, he just couldn't sleep at night.
Watching him struggle with it, watching him fight through it, to play, to perform, to be present, to show up with a smile on his face, bringing everybody coffee despite having lost sleep.
I soon realized, I think, the last year or two, mm-hmm. of how devastating it is for someone like that to have that condition. Mm-hmm. It would rip him apart every day. Mm-hmm. He'd go to sleep, and it would rip him apart in sleep. Then he would wake up and have to do it all over again. Mm-hmm. That will drive you crazy. Mm-hmm. And then he would get angry because I don't have time for this. Mm-hmm. I want to do this. I don't want to have to do this, but I have to do this. So I'll have a seizure, and then I'm going to be angry after. Mm-hmm. At everyone, even the people that I love.
Well, and he would also apologize. All of his friends talk about that, about how if Jared was mad at you, you knew he would apologize.
Say, "Hey, did I offend you when I did this thing to you 5 years ago? Like, I have no idea what you're talking about."
I learned, and his friends were learning, "Oh, it's Jared again. Mm-hmm. Don't take it personal. Mm-mm. He has epilepsy. Mm-hmm. If he didn't, he wouldn't be like that."
We knew the medications weren't, working perfectly, but we had hope in Vancouver being able to do something that would take care of his condition. And it did not occur to us that would not work.
It was a beautiful day in December, and I hadn't heard from him. And we always heard from him. I mean, whether it was calls in the middle of the night or...
Usually once every 24 hours.
Yeah, easily.
But Jared hadn't called, and he wasn't answering his phone.
Nope.
And it had been a couple of days, and Amanda had this gut feeling. She knew. Mm-hmm. She knew that something had gone wrong. Mm-hmm.
When we got the phone call from Amanda We were in shock. And we were sobbing our eyes out, and we were driving down the road, tried to get to Jared.
I didn't expect it. Like, I didn't want to believe it, that it could have happened just like that.
And I didn't get to say goodbye. Shit, sorry.
I wish I got to talk to him more before he passed, obviously. It's definitely hard. I had to bury my best friend. So.
Emotions seem to hit you much harder, much faster.
Yeah.
It's like being double shocked.
And it's so weird to have to go and tell the story to so many people that you don't know, like Services Canada and, the doctors. I got a call from the dentist, I think it was a couple of days later, saying Jared's supposed to be here for a dentist appointment. And I had to say, he's not going to make it because he's dead. And she didn't know what to say. And I didn't know what to say other than that.
Yeah, there was a lot of things we were planning on doing, for sure. And he died just way too young. I mean,
it's just been a really big loss for us all.
It's not something that's ever really going to go away. Every time I hear one of his favorite songs or play on a stage that I had shared with him, it's still there.
It was easy to overlook or miss some of the sadness and loss and frustration. And I mean, he would speak about these things at times, but still there was way more than he would ever talk about because he didn't too much want to talk about it, I don't think.
He didn't like showing his pain. He just wanted to help everyone.
When he was sharing that openly with more people, I think it really did make a difference for them because then they could help him and they understood. And I don't think Jared ever understood when he was alive how loved he was. I like, he would always say, oh, I screwed up, or, he would be so worried about how he was coming across. And I would say to him, it doesn't matter. People are going to judge, haters going to hate, all that stuff. And he would say, yeah, Mom, you're right. And he was so worried all the time and so fearful. And I think that's what he has said to me most from the other side is, Mom, I'm okay now because I'm not afraid. Yeah. And I wish, I know he knows, but still it would have been nice for him to allow them to support him through this year of surgery and recovery, because then he would have known it while he was alive, how loved and respected he was.
a lot of good friends and family. I miss him a lot. It was very easy to love that guy.
It was fairly straightforward. It wasn't elaborate. It was just a few of his good friends that wanted to do something in his honor. And I think the idea was just get a few good bands together on a stage. Money goes towards epilepsy research. And then it snowballed and snowballed into getting posters and shirts made for him.
The shirt that I designed, I had the idea of making it look like classic and vintage. I just really wanted to immortalize them in it.
The whole idea of the group is we're trying to get money towards to get more beds, especially in BC, because there's only 2 beds, and that's probably why he was on the wait list as long as he was. And so, if it was something where we can get more, I think the goal is about 8 beds. If we can get that, then it'd be a heck of a lot better for everybody else.
So at one point, there was a band who created a cheer just for us, which was the 8 Beds Not 2, but in heavy metal style. And that I think was the highlight for me.
8 Beds Not 2! 8 Beds Not 2! 8 Beds Not 2! 8 Beds Not 2!
And so they did wind up raising close to $10,000 in this event. And really, that was them. That was all them. These kids who have no money, who were artists and struggling and in their 20s. You know, they came with money to spend on this because they didn't care what they were going to get back. They just wanted to put it towards changing this.
It's really cool and really inspiring to see how much we can all do, like when we come together.
It turned into this bigger sort of event, and I'm grateful that it did because it will really get a story told. And I think people should hear this story.
And it made me really happy to see that many people caring, because it seemed like nobody really cared about him that much because he didn't get what he needed.
I feel like it's a really great gift to be able to learn about him in different ways through his family and through his friends that I, am now closer with. A stronger, closer sense of community and chosen family.
When he passed, suddenly this group of young people, not suddenly, I put it out there that they could start coming, and I was amazed at how they did show up, and they would introduce themselves like, oh, I'm part of the metal family, or I knew him in high school. It was a space for them to grieve and to share about who Jared was to them. As one of them said, Jesse said, we need each other. Yeah, we really need this.
I don't really hear much at all about epilepsy awareness, which there definitely needs to be more.
Not an easy life, and not a life that is understood by most people.
A lot of people got weird and awkward, and it's like a heavy subject, and they would treat him differently. And they would give him pity looks and stuff. And so it was really hard for him to talk with people about, and a lot of people just thought it was so uncomfortable and they didn't want to talk about it.
I can't imagine how it is finding out that you have this, or even starting from it, especially with if you just get a head injury and now you have this. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'd be absolutely terrified.
It's a life-threatening thing if not taken care of, and it just didn't feel like it was a big deal going into these places. It was like, oh yeah, that happens.
The resources that might help were limited, and there was no particular sign of improvement about that. He
kind of just was turned away instead of given a chance to get his surgery.
I don't know why we don't have the funding or enough, or what's going on, like in Victoria or BC or anything. Even in Canada, it's tough, right? That healthcare system.
Jared died waiting for surgery. If there perhaps had been more beds and been more availability, this could have been prevented.
It is such a powerfully traumatic thing to go through, and the family is still dealing with this over a year afterwards. You need some resourcing, you need some external resourcing, some specialized kinds of counseling, and I think even before that, as much education as you can get to really understand what you're dealing with.
I would say a big false statement around epilepsy is that, maybe people are scared, but really these are just people with epilepsy. They're not. they're not only defined by their epilepsy, they're defined by who they are and what they love and their talents and their gifts.
I don't miss the vibrations, but I really miss Jared.
And, he was a great person, great friend, and was just super special to be able to play with him. So
you just knew that he wanted to be there for you, which was really nice. Yeah.
He was very forgiving, even in the worst of times, with my family at times, of course, because families always have struggles. He would always be the one to bring us back together.
When you think about how impacted he was by epilepsy and he could still be all of that, imagine what he could have been without it. Yeah.
The last thing that should have happened to somebody like Jared was to die from a seizure. Not okay.
For me, it's more feeling ripped off.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really get a chance with Jared. I started and was going in a great direction. And then he's gone. And I was very angry.
Mm.
And maybe I was so angry because it could have been prevented.
That's what makes this so important.
Mm-hmm.
It shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't be happening. And certainly shouldn't be happening for lack of what is needed. Just get it together and make it happen.
Our loss, you can't fix it. You can't. And we can only hope to prevent this for other families in the future by doing what we're doing, by creating events and doing this, no matter how hard it is. And I think it's because Jared would have wanted it that way. He really would have. You're such a sweetheart. Such a sweet guy.
I almost cry at some point while listening to the song, even though it's a heavy thrash metal song. These lyrics are, they really hit deep because they're his struggles with this, and yeah, I could read them out to you if you want.
I think that would be great. What do you think? I think we'll have it. Yeah, if you don't mind.
There's a couple F words. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, we're uncensored.
Okay, good. Because it really shows his frustration. So the first verse is, what the fuck is going on? Can feel my soul being ripped from me, stripped apart. What is this realm I have been sent? Maybe it's fine. I'm just in a dream, but this can't be whatever it seems. I can't seem to get out of this empty abyss where nothing exists. The chorus is, we fight for life in this thing that cannot be, no dark, no light. And then he whispers, never get out. Now that you are a prisoner of purgatory. Super haunting. Second verse is, what the fuck did I do wrong? Can't you see I don't belong? This is his alter ego saying, or him talking to himself. Shut your mouth, you blabbering fool. Let me say this is true by you. All these paths that are now destroyed, the dents of your mind is such a void. Now you must face your imminent doom. You better get used to this blank tomb. And then it's the chorus again. And then at the end, there's a huge blood-curdling scream, and it because it's a metal song. But I mean, it's really hard to listen to it now.